question, therefore, is there a rural-urban divide, and is that an X factor in this 2024 elections? Who better to answer that than someone who has been studying the agrarian crisis for years? I spoke a short while ago to P. Sainath, Magsaysay Award winner. And joining me now is India's chronicler of rural affairs, Magsaysay Award winning journalist P. Sainath is with me. Appreciate your joining us, Sainath. If I were to turn back the clock to even 15, 20 years ago, Sainath, I recall your searing pieces on the water tanker mafias of Maharashtra, and now we are seeing both in Karnataka and Maharashtra, large parts are drought hit. Water tankers are providing water once in every 8 days. Has nothing really changed on the ground, and why is it not resonating at election time?
I think it's changed a lot for the worse, Rajdeep, and the drought that you've been witnessing in your travels in Maharashtra and Karnataka, those droughts are not just meteorological droughts, okay? They are closely linked to and spring from severe inequalities in the distribution of water. We need to confront them as essentially issues of justice, plus, as you say, no one's taking note. I think one of the frightening things is we are not taking note of climate change at all in terms of what it means for water, what it means for farming. There are very huge inequalities involved. And India is, as you know, in these last few years, we have emerged clearly as the front runner in nations of the world with multiple inequalities. So yes, the farming crisis is deepening. Yes, the policy makers are in fact dismissing, explicitly dismissing the problems of inequality.
When you say inequality in water distribution, give us a sense, give our viewers a sense of just how deep this inequality is in water distribution. As I said, when I went to a village 50 kilometers outside Baramati, they are getting water once in every 8 days, once in every 7 days from a tanker. They pay 200 rupees for a large drum, 60 rupees for a small one. In Bengaluru, in rural Bengaluru itself, people were lining up for water. So how deep is this inequality?
It's incredibly deep, because if you just went, the very places you went, within the city, you look at the per capita availability in Mumbai, you can look at it in the slums, and you can look at it in Cuff Parade or Malabar Hill. You're seeing a per capita difference in availability of hundreds of liters in a day. Second, Rajdeep, in your home state and in your city of Mumbai, you know that we get most of our water. I live in a place where I get 24 hours water. Most of our water comes from the 5 or 6 Tulsi, Vaitarna lakes of Thane, from Adivasi areas, Palghar, Thane. If you look at those areas themselves, as I know you have, it's very hard for you to find an Adivasi household that has piped water. But their water serves us 24 hours a day in the cities. And it's like that in every city. A few years ago, the Times of India did an RTI, the journalist was, I think, Priyanka Kakodkar, which showed us that in Maharashtra, the towns get 400% more water than the villages from where the rivers originate.
So why is this not becoming an election issue? Why is it that people don't seem to want to vote on who will provide us water? Now, the Prime Minister himself has said, Har Ghar Jal Nal program of the Prime Minister. You've got the Congress party, which has ruled this country for years, which has claimed that it will ensure that every household has piped water. Why is this still a pipe dream for many?
Well, in fact, you have seen yourself what those statements and promises mean on the ground. You have just returned from trips looking at that. I am trying to say, Rajdeep, that it's part of the package of incredible inequalities that India has, multiplied many times over in the last 30 years, but primarily fastest in the last 10. Now, just look at two things. Look at a few numbers. That water inequality is part of many inequalities, not just rural-urban gaps, intra-rural, intra-urban, gender inequalities, inequalities in income and wealth, social inequalities. Yet, you have the chairman of the 16th Finance Commission writing with a headline in the Times of India, a piece that says, don't lose sleep over inequality. It really means nothing. And the masses don't care about it themselves. That's essentially what he has written on April 2 in the Times of India. You have the chief economic advisor to Mr. Modi, and that is quite a post. I mean, the chief advisor to the Vishwaguru, it's quite something. And yet, he says, it's not really the business of government to provide employment, you know. It's not really that in the normal world, in his words, jobs are given out by, are to be provided by the commercial sector, by which he means the private sector. Now, neither of these guys appears to have read that document which you and I call the Constitution of India. What it says about these inequalities, what it says about how to do it, about that the state shall provide a social order in which justice, social, economic, and political shall inform all institutions of national life, that the state shall strive to minimize inequalities in income and endeavor to eliminate inequalities in status facilities. Just let me give you one number, Rajdeep. India today has 200 billionaires in the latest Forbes list. In 1991, you had 0. 200 billionaires account for a net asset worth of $954 billion. That's about, depending on which way you're cutting your GDP, that's about that's between a fifth and a fourth of your gross domestic product. It means 200 individuals or 0.000014% of your population have wealth equivalent to 1/4 or 1/5 of your GDP. That's inequality. You need to lose sleep over it. But your top officials, chief economic advisor and, the chairman of the 16th Finance Commission think this is all nonsense.
But the fact is, rural distress, as I said, is acute in several parts of the country. Do you see it falling incomes post-COVID in some of these parts? I've met agriculturists who told me their costs of inputs have increased. How do you see it play out? We see anger both against state governments and against center. There's a sense that that many of the farmers and those at the margins of rural society just seem helpless almost. There seems to be cynicism. The people I met said, the netas come to us once in every 5 years seeking votes. Where has the system gone wrong?
Yeah. Rajdeep, it went wrong from the day we started violating the Constitution, injunctions, and the directive principles of state policy, consciously and celebrating inequality. Now, when you're talking about the farmers, remember that there was a promise in 2017 to double their income in 5 years. At the end of the 5 years, the government's own figures show that if you divide the income of farmers into income from agricultural income, cultivation, from wage labor, from livestock, instead of doubling the income of the farmer from cultivation has actually fallen when you were supposed to double it. Remember that in 2014, Mr. Modi said he would provide 1 crore, 10 million jobs to rural youth. Why would there not be distress when you have done nothing of the sort? And 3, you also promised in 2014 to implement the main recommendations of the Swaminathan Commission. I don't agree, Rajdeep, that people are not are indifferent to what's happening. Remember that you saw the world's largest protest and movement for justice lasting 53 weeks at the gates of Delhi. Yeah. And against the unjust farm laws, which are now simply being introduced from the back door in a number of methods. You're going to see rural distress up further. And also it's going to merge with some of the things, the terrible things that are happening in climate.
So would you see, going ahead, do you believe that this is where any government, whoever is elected on the 4th of June, needs to reshift priorities, needs to see what are you going to do to actually double farm income? What are you actually going to do to make our farms more productive? What are you going to do to ensure that youth actually find farming lucrative, or at least find other ways in which they can be able to make a living in rural India? Is that, according to you, a challenge which any government needs to really debate upon?
You're absolutely right. That's exactly what they need to do. And also remember, apart from farmers, what about workers? I'm saying there are many things that can be done, Rajdeep. For instance, you have to increase the number of work days in the rural areas from 100 to 200 work days under the MGNREGA without add an existing provision of 100 days without creating digital hurdles that simply keep people away or don't give them payments on time. So it is the business of government. Despite what your chief economic advisor says, that government should not be really concerned with the major provision of employment now on. It is the business of the government to provide equitable access to land, water, land rights of women farmers, Dalit farmers, Adivasi farmers. There are all the possible routes that you can look at, that you can implement. And I think that it should start with a special session of Parliament on the rural crisis, on the agrarian crisis and related issues.
I think that's a very important point. Whoever comes to power should be willing to have a special session to deal with the agrarian crisis that still exists in this country. P. Sainath, for putting all of this in some kind of context for our viewers. As always, I appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.